hid silk in a statue, then disappeared in the desert. The year is roughly 270 AD. Our setting, Dunhuang, a crucial oasis town clinging to the edge of the Taklamakan Desert. This wasn't just any desert. It was a swallowing ocean of sand, a place where empires tested their limits, and travelers whispered of demons and mirages. Dunhuang, however, was a lifeline, a vital stop on the Silk Road, funneling unimaginable wealth between the East and West. It's here, amidst the camel caravans and bustling marketplaces, that our story begins, with a Buddhist monk named, well, history has unfortunately forgotten his name. We only know him as a brother of the local monastery, a quiet, unassuming figure known more for his devotion than his business acumen. But appearances can be deceiving, especially in a town built on trade and secrets, because this monk wasn't just chanting scriptures. He was engaged in a far more earthly pursuit, smuggling, silk to be precise, and his method, utterly ingenious, if incredibly risky, a hollowed-out Buddha statue. His silent accomplice in this illicit trade, the Silk Road wasn't just a path. It was a complex network of regulations, tariffs, and outright banditry. Smuggling was rife. The incentives were huge. Silk was more valuable than gold, and empires rose and fell on its control. Now, our monk wasn't motivated by greed, at least not entirely. The monastery was perpetually short on funds. Donations were down, and the local governor, a man known for his extravagant tastes and even more extravagant taxes, was squeezing them dry. The monk saw an opportunity to alleviate their suffering, a way to channel the wealth of the silk rowed back into the community. His plan was simple, yet audacious. Acquire bolts of high-quality silk, conceal them within the statue, and transport them to a contact further down the trade route. There, he would sell them for a tidy profit, enough to keep the monastery afloat for months, perhaps even years. His initial attempts were successful, almost laughably so. Guards, more interested in bribes than thorough searches, waved him through without a second glance. The statue, radiating serenity and holiness, was the perfect disguise. Success breeds complacency, and our monk was about to learn a harsh lesson about the dangers of overconfidence. Suspicion began to brew, not because of any meticulous investigation, but because of gossip. A merchant noticed the monk's increasingly well-fed appearance, his new robes, and the subtle repairs being made to the monastery. He couldn't help but notice how the other monks, once gaunt and threadbare, were suddenly looking rather prosperous. Rumors spread like wildfire through the marketplace. Whispers of a miracle, a divine intervention, and more ominously, smuggling. The governor, always eager for a new source of revenue, or an excuse to confiscate wealth, took notice. He dispatched his most ruthless captain, a man named Zhao, to investigate. Zhao was no fool. He knew the Silk Road was built on lies and deceit. He also knew that religious institutions often masked their activities behind a veneer of piety. Ordered a thorough search of the monastery, focusing on the one object that seemed too perfect, too serene, the Buddha statue. His men found it, of course. The hollow interior, crammed with exquisitely woven silk, was an open admission of guilt. The monk was apprehended, dragged before the governor, and faced accusations of tax evasion, theft from the empire, and sacrilege. Now, here's where our story takes its most bizarre turn. The monk confessed. He admitted to everything, readily detailing his smuggling operation and the reasons behind it. He pleaded not for mercy, but for understanding. He argued that his actions were motivated not by personal gain, but by a desire to help his community. The governor, surprisingly, seemed intrigued. He saw an opportunity not to punish the monk, but to exploit his smuggling route for his own benefit. He proposed a deal. The monk would continue his operation, but a significant portion of the profits would go directly to the governor. It was a devil's bargain, but the monk, desperate to protect the monastery, agreed. The statue was returned, the smuggling resumed, and the governor's coffers began to swell. But this uneasy alliance wouldn't last. News of the governor's scheme inevitably reached the ears of the imperial authorities. An investigation was launched, and the governor, fearing exposure, panicked. He decided to silence the monk permanently, to erase any trace of his involvement. He summoned the monk to his palace, ostensibly to discuss the latest shipment of silk. But the meeting was a trap. The monk never returned to the monastery. He simply vanished. Some whispered that he was murdered on the governor's orders, his body buried somewhere in the endless dunes of the Taklamakan. Others claimed he escaped into the desert, seeking refuge in a remote hermitage, or perhaps even crossing the mountains into India. The truth remains lost to time, swallowed by the sands of history. What we do know is this: the governor was eventually arrested and executed for corruption. The monastery, though spared further persecution, never fully recovered. And the Buddha statue, once a symbol of hope and salvation, became a chilling reminder of the dangers of greed and the fragility of trust. The tale of the smuggling monk serves as a stark lesson. Even in the most spiritual settings, human nature, with all its flaws and complexities, will always find a way. And sometimes the price of doing good, or what one perceives as good, is higher than anyone could have imagined. A simple monk, a hollow statue, and the unforgiving desert. A historical hidden case, forever shrouded in mystery.